This video is sponsored by the Wandering Tavern. Nepal, where are you going? I need your help making a campaign calendar.
Too late. I'm going on holiday. I've earned it.
But where?
The Wandering Tavern, a Studio Ghibli-inspired setting that is system-agnostic and easily adaptable to Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition and other tabletop role-playing games. Their Traveler's Guide has over 180 pages and 15 battle maps, detailing every nook and cranny of this floating RPG setting.
You're going on vacation to a tavern?
It's not just a tavern. Hey, where'd you get the wings?
Gnome Depot.
Oh. The Wandering Tavern is full of plot hooks, mysteries, threats, and everything you need to run a campaign. It's also the perfect pit stop in already established worlds, where your players can delve into a whole new sort of adventure. Plus, the content is 100% human-created, with no AI involvement.
So where can Game Masters get a copy?
Just visit the link in the description below, and you can use the code DAVID10 at checkout to get 10% off your purchase. Come join the adventure at the Wandering Tavern.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. When building a world for your fantasy campaign, a lot of focus may be put on the setting, characters, monsters, and general theme of the world. But something that often takes a back seat to these and other aspects is the world's calendar. And while it's certainly possible to run an entire campaign without the players ever knowing what day of the week it is in-game, including a campaign calendar can add a profound amount of depth to the setting that you may not get anywhere else. Let's look at a few things you should consider when creating a campaign calendar, then dive into some specific examples of fantasy calendars and what you should include in your own. When designing a calendar for your campaign world, or creating any other homebrew content for that matter, you need to find a proper balance between unique and familiar. There's plenty of leeway between the two, and getting it wrong, so to speak, isn't the end of your campaign world. It just might need a few adjustments. But here's the reason why going too far in either direction can be problematic. Many game masters want their world to be original, which is certainly a noble goal. Uniqueness within a campaign setting makes it stand out from the rest and distinguishes it from the crowd. But when a world becomes too unique, it becomes difficult to imagine, and in a theater of the mind game, this could be catastrophic. Either your players will picture something far different from your own vision of the world, which can lead to miscommunication elsewhere in the game, or they won't be able to imagine anything at all, which can be just as problematic. On the other hand, familiarity allows us to relate to the world much more easily. What is a tree? What is a cloud? What is the ocean? Each of these words immediately conjures up images in our minds, and while no two people will have the exact same definition of them, we still know what is meant by each term. So why is overfamiliarity a problem? Because of its sameness. Rather than painting a unique portrait of your campaign world, one that is too familiar begins to feel like a photocopy of every other work of fantasy. So where do we draw the line? That's something you will have to decide for your own setting and gaming group, but here are some tips. An established calendar isn't used in every campaign world. I know for a fact I've skipped over creating one in a number of my old D&D campaigns. But taking the time to create a calendar will add another layer of depth to your world and give you an additional tool to aid you as a game master. Until you inform your players otherwise, most, if not all of them, will assume that the calendar in your world is similar to our own. This goes back to a default sense of familiarity and includes things such as the length of a day, week, month, and year, as well as the passing of seasons in temperate regions, having only one moon, or very few at least, and even the names of days and months. In order to change these assumptions, you'll have to inform your players of them up front, but this leads back to the choice of familiar versus unique. Keep as many calendar and astrological defaults for your world as would make sense to your players, and focus on changing the ones that interest you as a game master in order to add the desired depth to your setting. In most cases, this will focus on the names you use in your world's calendar. In the broadest sense, many fantasy worlds are compared to J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth, and for good reason. The famous author's setting was both low-tech and high-magic like most fantasy RPG worlds, and it contained many of the species we use in our own games. But there's another aspect of Middle-earth that we can borrow in order to set our own campaign world apart from the real one. Rob Words is a channel that focuses on the history of the English language. In one of his videos, he explored the origin of our months' names. Here he showcased the Shire calendar, which Tolkien created and used within his novels. As Rob points out, the names of the Shire calendar months are based on Old English month names. If you don't already have a calendar for your world, the Shire calendar makes for a good fantasy analog of our own. And if you want to come up with unique names for your campaign calendar months, Rob's video is a great inspiration for that endeavor. However, you may want to take a different route when it comes to naming the months of your fantasy calendar. The popular game franchise The Elder Scrolls has their own calendar system that consists primarily of an adjective and noun pairing, such as Morningstar, Second Leaf, and Frostfall. You can borrow this system for your world or easily create your own after the same fashion. There are plenty of descriptive words associated with each season, and creating a collection of these to use as the names of fantasy months can be a worthwhile mental exercise for any game master. Days of the week are another named aspect of our calendar which borrow from history and mythology. While it's perfectly acceptable to name your days Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and so forth, it's also fitting to adapt those names to fit your world. Referring back to the Elder Scrolls, the designers made slight changes to the names of real-world days in order to create a balance of uniqueness and familiarity to their games. For a homebrew game, it is certainly acceptable to use these names as part of your calendar, or come up with similar-sounding day names, allowing their usage to slip into your player's vocabulary with ease. If, on the other hand, you've created detailed history and mythology for your world, borrowing names from this campaign backstory is another option for creating the days and months of your world's calendar. While this does move away from familiarity, such a method is not unlike how we came up with our own titles. Thor, Saturn, Julius and Augustus Caesar, and other gods and famous figures from our past now adorn the modern calendar, so why not do something similar in your own world? Holidays are a familiar part of our lives in and of themselves, so creating such events for your campaign calendar is the perfect way to add some uniqueness to your setting. Let's take a look at some real-world holidays as examples and build from there. New Year is a celebration of new beginnings and is the perfect start for any fantasy calendar. However, where on your calendar the new year begins is up to you. As was mentioned in Rob Ward's video, our own year once began in March rather than January. As the season of spring is also associated with new beginnings and rebirth, the spring equinox might mark the start of the new year. Or there could be some other historic event in your world that set the first day of the calendar. The choice is yours. Valentine's Day is a celebration of lovers, yet its historical origin is a bit murky. Some sources claim that it was named after one of several Saint Valentines, or Valentinus, who performed weddings for young men and their brides after Emperor Claudius II decided that single men made better soldiers, thus decreeing that they could not wed at such an age. For his defiance, Saint Valentine was executed. Does your fantasy world contain a holiday celebrating love, romance, or marriage? What about one that honors a fallen saint or hero who stood up for a cause? Some of the most lively and popular celebrations in your world may in fact have dark and deadly origins. St. Patrick's Day celebrates the patron saint of Ireland who, after escaping slavery, returned to the country and brought Christianity to its people in the 5th century. Legends of the saint tell how he drove all the snakes from Ireland, and his holiday honors him with shamrocks, feasts, and religious services. Your own world may have prominent heroes and religious figures of the past worthy of celebrating, each with their own holiday and the legends that surround them. The existence of Independence Day in the history of a nation denotes a point when it became free of a conquering or founding empire. Were any of the countries or territories in your own fantasy world once a vassal state that rebelled against their rulers and won? If so, why not celebrate it? The modern celebration of Halloween, or All Hallows Eve, originated with the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. This was the end of summer, the harvest season, and the Celtic year. For these ancient people, it was a time of death and spirits, when the veil between the mortal world and the land of the dead was at its thinnest. In a fantasy setting that focuses on monsters and undead beings, such a macabre holiday would be only fitting. Thanksgiving is the modern-day analog of a harvest festival where family and friends gather to share a grand meal with one another. This is another appropriate holiday to include in a fantasy world where farming and agriculture are prominent. Gathering crops, preparing a meal, and fellowshipping with other members of a community can be an important event on your own campaign calendar. Christmas is one of the most popular holidays throughout the world as a celebration of gift-giving and merriment. While the modernized version of the holiday often focuses on Santa Claus and Christians honor the birth of Jesus Christ, this time of year was once the ancient celebration of Yule for the Norse people of Scandinavia, as well as Saturnalia for the Romans. Many traditions from these original holidays continue into the modern celebration of Christmas, such as the reference to this wintry time of year as Yuletide. This can also be true of your own fantasy world, where modern festivals have incorporated unrelated traditions from ancient times. When your players ask about such disparities, it's the perfect opportunity to tell them a snippet from the vast lore of your world. Knowing the names of the days, months, and festivals of your calendar is all well and good, but when did the calendar begin? In other words, what year is it? Deciding the year in your campaign setting can be an arduous task as you pore over the history of your world in search of an event so significant that it would herald the start of the modern calendar. Or it could just be an arbitrary number you came up with on lunch break. Here are some options you can use when assigning a year to your campaign calendar. A universal year assumes some great historical event worth remembering, and thus the calendar year began at that time. What would constitute such a magnificent happening is up to you, but in a world of magic and monsters, these opportunities abound. In fact, such world-altering events may happen on the regular, historically speaking, that is. This could lead to your world's past being divided into different ages, with the numerical year reset at the start of each new age. This reset could happen even more frequently if your calendar is instead tied to a powerful kingdom or empire in your setting and the life of its current monarch. As each ruler passes on or steps down, a new king or queen begins their reign and the calendar starts anew. The cycling of the calendar year would continue for perpetuity, or until the last king falls. That does it for this episode. Whether or not you plan to create a calendar for your campaign setting, I hope this video gives you some inspiration for important festivals and historic events that can shape your world. And don't forget to check out the Wandering Tavern for brand new adventures among the clouds. Until next time, I'm David Watches.
And I'm Nepal Man Diaz.
And thanks for watching. Special thanks to my longtime friend Bill Batchelor for creating the logo for this channel, and to Dylan Smith for the character art used in this and other videos. I couldn't have done it without them.
For more gaming tips, check out these hot videos.